Yeah, good evening, everybody. Once again, all of you know that Mark is not present, so he's traveled, and so we must continue. My name is Titus Aronya, for those who do not know me. For those who have encountered, we have not encountered each other. My name is Aronya Titus. So last week, I want to thank Hez on the topic guarding the heart. It was guarding the heart, right? Yeah. And it was really powerful. It really touched my heart. And there is something he brought up. I think it was not his main message in the sermon, but it was talking about what to see. The question, what do you see? So I would like us to read from Genesis 13, verse 15. Maybe you can start from 13. I'll read the King James Version, then I'll borrow the Amplified for better illustrations. The Bible says, "But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. And the Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, Lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art, northward, and southward, and eastward, and westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered." This question, what do you see? To me, it really hit so hard that the other question that came also to my mind is the same question we get to be asked when we meet the doctor and you're sick, and then they don't, the first moment they say hello, and they ask a question, most of them, even the pharmacist, especially the pharmacist, because they don't want to treat you with the injection. So they will mostly ask, how do you feel? And basing on what you will answer, we'll give them the medicine, we'll give them the knowledge of what medicine you require at that period. So if you become so accurate, then they will not do further tests. That happens when we are treating our children, that because they cannot explain themselves, they will do further tests because the child cannot answer that simple question, how do you feel? They will keep crying. And when God comes to ask, what do you see? And he comes to Abram and tells Abraham to look. And he tells him, what you see is what I will give to you. And the verse that proceeds, it says, "And the Lord said unto him, Abram, after that Lot was separated, lift up thy own eyes." Let's read 15. "For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever." And then verse 16 now challenges what Abram has already seen. Verse 16 is saying, "I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered." So basically, verse number 16 is talking about the land that Abraham that can fit his seed or his children or his offspring, whatever word you like using, that it should be able to fit all those children. Verse 16. But now, verse 13, if Abraham was supposed to look like me, if I'm supposed to check around literally, I will not see that big land. I will not see the whole world. I will not see even another county, probably, because of the mountains and of the just the physical features that we have in the universe. And so this question is asking us to actually see that when God says, what do you see? Or when God asks, what do you see? is actually more of a spiritual question more than it is a physical question. Because if any person in the Bible that was asked, what do you see? When they first answered, for example, in Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 12. I promised to read the Amplified for this Genesis. What does it say? Thank you, Agnes. Genesis 13, let's read this first in the Amplified. It says, Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities. 13. But the men of Sodom were wicked and exceedingly great sinners against the Lord. The Lord said unto Abraham, after Lot had left him, lift up now your eyes, and look from the place where you are, northward and southward, and eastward and westward. For all the land which you will see, I will give to you. This is much simpler. For all the land which you see, I will give to you and to your posterity forever. And 16 says, and I will make your descendants like the dust of the earth, so that if a man could count the dust of the earth, then could count your descendants also, then could your descendants also be counted. Yeah. 17 and 18 says, arise, walk through the land and length of it and the breadth of it, for I will give it to you. Then Abram moved his tent and came and dwelt among the oaks of the terebinths of Mamre, wherever, which are at Hebron, and built there an altar to the Lord. So, thank you very much. So this question, when Abraham was able to be asked, first this is Abram, he's not even yet been, how do you say? Is not yet been changed the name to be Abraham. So you can say right now he has not even been converted to, as most of us like say. So he's still Abraham, and he's told, whatever amount of land you see is what I'm going to give you. And this is the same statement, almost the same statement that Joshua was also told, that every land, is it every land, that your feet will have to step on, I will give to you. So imagine if you are told that right now, for example, you are in the supermarket, at everything you get to touch is yours. So I don't read any verse that this guy starts speeding around, walking, touching everything. So it's more of a spiritual instruction. It's more of a spiritual instruction more than it is a physical instruction. Because if you told the current generation such a statement, that every place that you get, that your feet step on, man, you will go to nitwaje ile ya kuchukua passport in your house. Utaenda hapo, you get your passport, uende America, then unashuka, you don't even say hello to people, unakanyaga tu. Unatoka hapo, you go to Saudi Arabia, unakanyaga tu. But this is not what Joshua is being promised. He's being promised something different from what we actually come to see. That Abraham had to be able to have that vision, a clear vision in his heart. And sometimes I tend to think that Abraham could have just sat down and closed his eyes and just began seeing, maybe. Or Abraham was being given such an instruction. Maybe the first time he did, he looked, and you see when in Israel, it's most of, it looks like a valley. For those who have been there and those who have studied, it looks like a valley in some places, especially that place where he was. You stand there, you look here, you'll see a mountain and a mountain, or a high place. You will not be able to see the whole of Israel. But now, consequently, what happens is that Abraham is given something more spiritual than the physical. So I would like also to read from Jeremiah chapter 1. I just want us to see that question clearly. Jeremiah 1:12. Yeah. Thanks. Jeremiah 1:12 says, then the Lord said to me, let's read 11 first. Moreover, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Jeremiah, what do you see? And I said, I see a branch or shoot of an almond tree, the emblem of alertness and activity blossoming in late winter. You see, what this guy is seeing is an almond tree, isn't it? And I went to study what an almond tree, the significance of an almond tree in the Israelites, in the Jewish people. You see, number one, they know that this almond tree is the first to flower, is the first to give fruit. So imagine asking a 2022 Christian right now, what do you see? Bush. You say, I see a bush. Okay, let's say now you have the information about the almond tree. You know, right now, we will tend to be deeper than what we actually see. You see? Most of us, if you asked, for example, if you went to people who have studied botany and zoology, they actually know what an almond tree is. You know? So if you ask this guy, what do you see? And then they say, this is God asking, I have to be smart. So he will start saying, I see, in fact, they say, because it's the first to sprout, some Christians actually have said that it is a picture of resurrection, because it's the first to, because Jesus is the first fruits of all the of the resurrection. So the almond tree, and you see the answer that God says in 12 is, then said the Lord to me, you have seen well. Imagine if this guy gave statements up there. They will dwell on it. They will dwell on that question. Like, what do you see? Like right now, if you ask most of us, when they are, especially when God shows us things, there is a time God talked to me. He told me, let me talk about yesterday. Yesterday. I was in town, and God is telling me, now it's time to cross. It's time to cross. I was at GPO, I have to cross, but it's raining. And I was asking God to bring the fastest means possible for me to be able to go home. And, and then he tells me to wait. And so I'm waiting, and then he says, it's time to cross. And it's raining. So part of me is saying, don't cross, it's raining. And the other part is, cross. And you know, God does not repeat his instructions. He just stays to the first one. So I decided to cross. And immediately I cross, I get the fastest means possible, and it's just there at the right time. So I've just crossed. After crossing the GPO, I'm there at the stage. I'm sorry, I love the little things that God does. So I'm just there at GPU at the stage, and immediately a car comes, and it's a guy that drops me most of the time. So if I stayed there and I did not obey the instruction, it's time to cross. You see, that is not, if you start being deeper, what I'm actually saying is that when God asks us these questions, we tend to be more deeper, and then we miss the mark, or whatever God wants to do in our lives. Because sometimes you will see two people fighting, and God asks you, what do you see? Or you would see a child. God would show us a child crossing a road, and there is a speeding car coming, and then they ask you, what do you see? You should actually say, I see a child, I see a road, and I see a car. But now we want to explain. I see death. For example, if I put a pineapple here and I asked you to give me, to tell me what you see, you will, one of you will say, I see juice. Another one will say, I see a crowned pineapple. Another one will say, I see a fruit. Another one will say, a cake. I see a cake. So everything that we see will affect. You see, this affects the progress of God. Talking to Jeremiah, this affects the progress of the more prophecy, more revelation of what he's going to do. And we shall see that also later when Jesus is also asking the same question. So, verse 12, he says, then the Lord said to me, you have seen well. For I am alert and active. Now he is explaining what this guy has seen. I am alert and active, watching over my word to perform it. You see, this is different, and it's far away from what an almond tree actually does. You see? And God is saying, that means I am alert and active, watching over my word to perform it. This is why Jesus says that we have to be like little children. You know, little children actually will believe everything that you actually tell them. And they will answer. You ask, you show them your hand, your palm, and you ask them, what do you see? They will say, I see a hand. And they are wondering. But if you do this, and then you ask Hez, what do you see? Hez might tell you, I see 5 generations. I see your future. People read palms, by the way. Say, this one, bana ujipange uombe sana. You see, this is affecting the progress of God. Because verse 13 says, and the word of the Lord came to me the second time, saying, what do you see? And I said, I see a boiling pot, and the face of it is tipped away from the north, its mouth about to pour forth on the south of Judea. You see? He's seeing that. That's what this guy is actually seeing. Then the Lord said to me, out of the north, the evil which the prophets had foretold as the result of national sin shall disclose itself and break forth upon all the inhabitants of the land. I'll share this small story. I wanted to say testimony. There's a day, one of my first experiences in MasterClass. There's a day Mark holds my hand, and he's looking at my clock. This is a clock or watch. He looks at my watch, and looks at me, and then he looks at it again. I'm wondering, is yours not working? But he, and then he takes me, he walks me around that place near a bush, and then he takes it off, and I cut, and then he throws it away. Mark, what's going on, man? Mimi sijakujua yatujuani hivyo. This could be more offensive, or this is too much. But then he tells me, man, you are a king. And kings, do you know how they used to dress? And then I say, yeah, I know how they used to dress. I don't know what is now. I didn't know what he was telling me. And then he asks me, what did they put on? Then I say, gold. I say, oh, yeah, gold. Is this gold? This is not gold. Ilikuwa saya 200. So he told me, man, you have to start putting on gold. And from that time, I look at those other things and those other small watches. I look at them and I wonder, why was I doing this, man? You see, my vision was changed towards those things. You see, and based on what we actually are able to show God, that how much we are able to show him that he has revealed himself to us. I don't know if that statement is coming out well. How much revelation we show God we have of him, he is able now to show us to take us to the next step. That is what I've come to understand in my spiritual journey. There's a time that we might be coming to a point, and then you say, this is it. Like the way Peter said to Jesus, that when he saw, you see when the vision of Peter, when he saw Jesus being transfigured and 2 men come, was Elijah and Moses, and he was not seeing what God was seeing. He was not seeing what Jesus was actually illustrating, because everything Jesus did was not, it was not magic. It was not for magic and for entertainment, because there's a time Satan tells him to change stones into bread. But he does not do that because his miracles are not for entertainment and such. So God is illustrating to Peter something different. This is a connection between the law and the prophets, but he is not seeing that. What Peter is seeing, he's saying we need to, he's seeing the glory, and he actually says, now, nikona maoni. I think we should have 3 tents here. We should live here now. Sasa hiyo ingekuwa nikaa na create nini, amefika mwisho, anasema hii ndio ile kitu. Sasa alikuwa anasema the glory of God will come. So Peter's vision proves to Jesus that this guy is not yet mature. You see? Because he's seeing something different from what God is actually illustrating to him. And later, you see, you hear about the disciples that were fighting a demon that they could not, they were not able even to deal with because of their faith. You see, their faith was different from what Jesus, they actually, it's like the guys of the sons of Sceva. When they are going to chase the demons, they don't come with their own faith. They say, through the name that that Paul preaches, we come to you. You see, they are sons of, they were sons of a priest. A priest, Sceva was a priest. And you see, that's the danger that happens, that we have not even actually instilled the faith into our children, actually. Because the illustration, or what God actually showed us, we should be able to teach. God is interested in the whole world learning about him and knowing about him, and mostly households. I've come to realize that he is interested in households, because from Genesis, you meet this guy, Adam. Adam, something in him knew that he needed a companion, but he did not choose a lion. You see, he was naming everything, but when he meets a different creature, hey, beautiful hair, beautiful eyes, walking on toes, and then he says, Eve, because you are flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone. And then, but you see, that is the vision that Adam had. If Adam's vision was altered, or if he could see Eve as another animal, then he says, rabbit. Then Eve could be rabbit. But what he saw, he said, hey, this is like me. You see, I look into her eyes, I see me. And I look at myself, I look at her, I see part of me also. But I think she shall be called woman, because she has come out of me. And he gives him a name. He says, your name will be Eve. And you see, that vision, I think it's part of what affects our marriages, because, or not even marriages, relationships, that when you meet someone and then you look at Titus and you say, friend. You've named friend when actually that is not a friend. Maybe that is, you see, when Jesus is going to choose the disciples, he prays overnight, the whole night, because what he's going to do, he might name someone who is not ready for the task. And so when he comes, he's able to look and he says, Peter. He's able to say, John. He's able to say, you are mine, you are mine, you are mine. He named them. And after naming them and choosing them, it came to a point that the gospel, or everything that he wanted to do, was effective, and it went as planned. Tuko pamoja? So as I conclude, I want to talk about Jesus' question to the disciples. It's in Matthew, is it 13 or 16? When he asks, who do you say I am? Mi ni nani? Hiyo ndio swali anauliza. It's it? 16, 16, verse 13. Now, when Jesus went into the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, who do people say that the Son of Man is? Who do people say that the Son of Man is? And they answered, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others say Jeremiah or one of the prophets. You see, this is the vision. When people saw Jesus, this is the vision they had, or this is what they saw. When they see him prophesy and something comes to pass, when they see him against the law, the law guys, you see, or the Pharisees, they say, hey, he's acting the same as Jeremiah. So others knew him as Jeremiah. So as Jesus continued his mission and as he continued his work, what they saw, part of the group saw a Jeremiah, and a part of the group they saw an Elijah, and the other group saw what? One of the prophets. They saw other prophets. That means they named many prophets. So Jesus asking these disciples what other people's opinion was, he wanted to know what their thoughts were, also were. Because we find that in verse 14, and it says, and they answered, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others say Jeremiah or one of the prophets. He said to them, but who do yourselves say that I am? You see, number one thing I learned from this is that Jesus wants to show these disciples that as long as I have been with you, not everybody knows who I am. So tell me what the other people say that I am. So they tell him actually the truth. Number one, he says that one of them saw you as a Jeremiah. Another one saw you as an Elijah or one of the prophets. And he says, now tell me what you say I am, because you are the guys I've been working with. You are the guys who should have full revelation of who I am. Because Jesus, sometimes we read that he could explain something in the multitude, alafu awaache hivyo, akuja elezee mbogi yake, si ndio? Angekuja tu wakae na wao, alafu waambie, mnajua, in fact they could ask, what did you mean? What did you mean, man? Unajua tungekuulizia huko nikaa tungekuwa tunakushukisha. By that's what we also do, si ndio? Sometimes you see someone in our WhatsApp groups and you say, hey, this guy bana, and then you follow him in inbox, mwambie, we, sitaki kukuulizia kwa group. Hii ni nini unafanya kwa group? Ama hii ni nini you are trying to say? So this is the WhatsApp group of Jesus now. They come together and then they could ask, hey, ulikuwa unamaanisha nini? Halafu atawaambia nilikuwa namaanisha hivi na hivi na hivi. So they could get more revelation and more power because they were in the school, in the school of Jesus. As he continued training them, you see, he wants to know how much revelation have they got now. You see, this chapter is just before the crucifixion. If you continue reading, he is about to depart, but he doesn't want to depart until he is sure that these guys know who I was. Nisiende, and then they go and shuhudia. Unafika mahali, like some people who preach and teach nowadays, they have not encountered him. Sindio? They have not encountered him. There is a verse in Jeremiah that says, these prophets that are prophesying, I did not send them. But I see them prophesying. He's telling Jeremiah, I see them prophesying. No, wanafanya poa. But I did not send them. And then he says, if only they came and sat under my feet, and then I could do what? I could teach them and I could tell them what to go and say. But now they are just prophesying. There's a prophet called Micaiah. He was wondering, why do I have different prophecy from everyone? Because everyone comes and prophesies to, what was this king? Jehoshaphat. He tells him, you're going to, was it Jehoshaphat? And amwambia, you're going to win. You're going to win. But Micaiah in his prayer, anaona different. Akasema mbaya ni mbaya. Akasema, even if everyone is saying something different, according to the God of Israel, I want to tell you what the voice of the Lord says. This is what God says. You're going to lose. Hii umepiga nje. Hii beti imechomeka hii. But kwa sababu the other prophets are also there and they are wondering, but your prophecy, you see, the other prophets were not only mad or angry because this guy was prophesying. They were angry because they actually had gone through the process of prophecy. Sijui kama mnaelewa hapo. There is a chapter in the Bible in 2 Kings where we actually have a school of prophets, si ndio? Imagine hiyo chuo alikuwa anasomaji. So it's possible that every sign, according to them, this guy was going to win. Si ndio? Everything he was going to win. But now this guy comes up with a prophecy. You know, this guy has been in the secret place, and God has talked to him. It's different from the other guys. Now he comes to tell them what he actually says, but he sees something different from other people, and they actually slap him. The big prophet comes, and then he slaps him in front of everyone, so that he can be despised, so that he cannot be believed, so that they can know. And that tells you that this guy, he might have been despised because of maybe his belief and age, maybe whatever. Because in Israel, maybe you cannot clap a big man like that. He was not older than them. They were saying, man, we've been there. And according to what we are saying, this guy is going to win. So verse 16 says, Simon Peter replied, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Then Jesus answered him, "Blessed, happy, fortunate, and to be envied." Wow. Ati, happy, fortunate, and to be envied are you, Simon Barjona. For flesh and blood, men have not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. Then 18. Because of what Peter has answered, it's unlocking. This is a key. It has unlocked what God is going to tell him in 18. And I tell you, you are Peter, Greek, Petros, a large piece of rock. And on this rock, Greek, Petra, a huge rock like Gibraltar, I will build my church, and the gates of Hades, the powers of the infernal region, shall not overpower it, or be strong to its detriment, or hold out against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind, declare to be improper and unlawful on earth, must be what is already bound in heaven. Hey, sikuwa nimesoma hivyo. Ati, on earth, it must be what is already bound in heaven. Si ati wewe unaamua. Ama nyinyi mnaisoma hivyo, aje? Iko hivyo. Ni kitu yenye, yani wewe unakuja kusema, you are coming to confirm kitu yenye imefungwa huko, you are confirming to the guys on earth. And whatever you loose, declare lawful on earth. It must be what is already loosed in heaven. So hakuna authority uko nayo hapo. Wewe unakuja wewe ni kai witness. Unasema ilikuja hivi kaanguka pale kafanya hivyo. So that is powerful to me, and I hope to you, because he says, I will give you keys. You see, these keys are unlocked after Peter's vision of who Jesus is. You see, Jesus walked on water, and after walking on water, Peter does not believe he's Jesus, the Christ, the Messiah. He says, kama ni wewe, niambie ni come. If it's really you, tell me to do what? To come. Now, Jesus walking on water, hakuwa anajaribu kuperform stunts za nini, zinitwanga nini, magic na gymnastic. Hakuonyesha, wase, ama hii ndio physics. In fact, CRE says, he was trying to prove that he has power over nature. That is what we've been taught, and what others are still teaching their children. That he was proving that he has power over nature. But Jesus was illustrating a different message, because he's saying God is a spirit. And those that worship him must worship him in truth and in spirit. So he was showing the spirit part of him. Why do I say this? Because in Genesis 1, the Bible says that in the beginning, when the world was dark and the water had covered the face of the earth, and then the Spirit of God was hovering. So he's trying to prove to these guys, if he's trying to check their eyes. Mnaona kweli? Mnaniona kweli? But he was not, hakuwa zile za, mnaonaje? You see, most of us right now, this generation, and it's actually mostly this generation, when something small happens, I saw another guy in South Africa, he's on YouTube. He was saying that the church should come on Sunday, they will witness the fire of God, the angels of God will be present. So everyone came, people invited their friends. They said, hey, this guy, man, he's a powerful prophet. And then when the guys came, kumbe jamaa ameenda ametafuta vijana wa nini lights. They know how to drop the lights. Mpaka inachora nini. How do you call that? 3D. They are doing the 3D angels. Now the 3D angels were done around the church, but everyone he commanded everyone to come in between hapa katikati. Yani usikae karibu na ukuta. Toka kwa ukuta. Wale those that the angels are going to minister to must be at the center. So he was avoiding that. And then the light guy does his thing. Then he says they are done their prayer meeting and says, when I have already done number 3, then you do what? unafinya switch. And then he says 3, 2, 1, boom. Then the 3D zoop, angels. And then women look and they are falling down. And I was wondering, can you actually capture angels on camera? Who knows? So the church, the church grew ×2 because of the camera. And I was thinking, if Jesus was such a guy, when he was walking on water, how many people would actually see that if he was doing like this guy when he was walking on water? Ingezunguka, because information could go to everywhere, even to the other nations. You remember the story of that Queen of Sheba. She was able to get the information about the king of Israel. And that information could run around. But you see, the gospel did not run around because this guy was not about magic and showing himself. And he proves that even in the wedding, when he performs a miracle and then say, cheza chini. Eh? See me, nyi kunyweni tu. Iko sawa. Then, so, in my conclusion remarks is that the vision we have to God, not to God, of God, will prove or will actually unlock the next step he will take us. But, yani nika exams, ndio? Nika exam ya 844. What if you prove that you are done with class 2, then you are the exam is, what do you see? After this, and this, what do you see? Then what you answer will take you to class 3 or make you stay in class 2 and still learn the same thing. My name is Titus Aronya, for those who don't know me. I am glad to be here. I want to invite, it is now my pleasure, my humble pleasure to invite a powerful teacher that of our generation that God has raised. Nicheze chini. So that was my time, guys. God bless. Thank you.
Ni kama ulikuwa anyway, next conclusion to last week. Mi sijui, mi si prophet. Judges tuendelee, Good. So that was a good conclusion to guarding the heart, because I was planning to continue after guarding the heart. I wondered why do we, from what we were discussing last time, there's a portion of doing what you've learned. That in doing what you've learned, in encountering God, whether it's vision, whether it's information, whatever it is, that there is a necessity then to act on what you need to act on. We finished, part of the discussion was Matthew, this is not 3, or is it 3? Matthew 3, verse 13. Then Jesus came from Galilee to Jordan to John to be baptized by him. But John protested strenuously, having in mind to prevent him, saying, "It is I who need to be baptized by you, and do you come to me?" But Jesus replied to him, and I use the kindergarten version here, and Jesus replied to him, "Because we must do all that God wants us to do." So I wondered, why do we go through this whole process of learning and hearing and visions, and then we do not do what God wants us to do? What stops us from that next step? You've gone through the questions of what do you see, and you've been, effectively, and I like something someone said once, that when you encounter God, you come out of there with an instruction. So the next thing is you're meant to be doing something. Yeah. But it means we have unguarded hearts, we don't. Why? How does God ask you, what do you see, and then tells you, I want you to go tell people this, that, and the other, or I want you to do this, or I want you to jump off that bridge, or whatever he might tell you, and we don't. And to get us moving, I will start with a question. A question by Christ. Luke 6:45. And I was thinking about this question, and then the verses thereafter I found very interesting that they come together. Luke 6, and my voice by the way is very raspy. Kuna kakitu, msijali. Verse 45. The upright, honorable, intrinsically good man, out of the good treasure stored in his heart, produces what is upright, honorable, and intrinsically good. And the evil man, out of the evil storehouse, brings forth that which is depraved, wicked, and intrinsically evil. For out of the abundance, overflow of the heart, his mouth speaks. So this heart is the one we were discussing about last time, guarding. Sindio? Then he asks a question. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not practice what I tell you? Why? Which tells me something. First of all, there is a correlation to Lord and doing. Even before we do anything else, that question is an answer. You cannot call him Lord and not do. Or, let me say it the other way around. If you're not doing, he's not your Lord. Bwana. If you are not doing, he's not your Lord. Lord, for those who like checking meanings like me, is like a master, he's the guy who instructs your life. Jesus is God, like God is God and demons shudder. But Lord is a different dynamic. Lord is someone who's subject to instruction. When someone is your Lord, you do not argue. I saw a meme the other day about, I don't know if I'll find it, about procrastination. Who remembers seeing that? Okay, wale wewe sijui tutakusaidia aje. 800 memes a day. There's a special class for you. I don't know if they'll find it, but effectively someone was saying that they had a new thought about procrastination. It is having the arrogance to think that God should give you extra time to do what you ought to do. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I ask of you? The interesting thing is where this heads. For everyone who comes to me and listens to my words, in order to heed their teaching and does them, I will show you what he is like. The guy who does, he is like a man building a house, who dug down and went down deep and laid a foundation upon the rock. And when a flood arose, the torrent broke against the house and could not shake or move it, because it had been securely built or founded on a rock. But he who merely hears and does not practice, when you wanamwita Lord, Lord, but do not practice, are the guys who build on sand. So I wondered, first of all, let's start at the point of understanding. We first of all do not even understand our dynamic and relationship with God. We think it's a thing for saying, Lord, you are my Lord. Bwana, Bwana, yes. We think it's just things to recite. And in so doing, we are already at a loss, because we are not even living up to the expectation of God. So I tried to look through a few things, and this by no means is it an exhaustive list. It's just, I guess, the things that we must do in the short time that now I have since, yes. I will start with stiff-necked people. I like saying that because there's a guy who used to rap and says, stiff-necked fools, stiff-necked people. And God said of them, it is a stiff-necked people. This is a story in Exodus. I found this story very interesting because it brought out some very interesting issues. Exodus 32, from verse 1. When people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, they gathered together to Aaron and said to him, "Up, make us gods to go before us. For this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." Number one, we are impatient people. And then, worst of all, we are impatient with God. Because Moses was not going up the hill mountain because it's like, wait, it's that time of the day. I need to go and do that thing. So, no, it's a God thing. It's an instruction. I have been asked to go. You all chill. There was a whole instruction, fence and everything. Do not go past this boundary. I'm going to meet God. Then his uko, I don't know at what point this was. I don't know, it was day 39, because he was up for about 40 days. Probably this is day 39, I don't know. Or maybe, I don't know how long it takes to make that thing. Maybe it's day 30. Guys were like, his story imeisha. This guy who brought us, it's a wrap. We become impatient with God. When we become impatient with God, we start doing very weird things. Number one, you can do what this guy said, make us a God. Which first of all is some statements weird me out. You guys have been brought out of Egypt with some serious show of might. And even God says, the reason why I did these things is to show you my might. But then they say, make us gods to go before us. For as for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has been. So already, they do not understand who brought them out. It's not, to them it's Moses, it's not God. Problem number one. Number two, therefore, in this space, they cannot be patient. They are not subject to the things that God requires of them. In another instance, 1 Samuel 15, this guy is told to go to war, the king. Let me read it, let me not paraphrase. Samuel told Saul, "The Lord sent me to anoint you king." So this is an anointed guy. over his people. Now listen and heed the words of the Lord. Now to heed is to do what? Thus says the Lord of hosts, I have considered and will punish what Amalek did to Israel. Verse 3, go and smite Amalek and utterly destroy all they have. Do not spare them. Kill both man, woman, infant, suckling, ox, sheep, camel, donkey. Saul assembled the men, 200,000, and they bounced. Verse 6, Saul warned the Kenites, go depart, get down from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them. Verse 7, Saul smote the Amalekites. Verse 8, and he took Agag king. This guy was like, this thing you're asking me to do, He took Agag king of Amalekites alive, though he utterly destroyed all the rest of the people. But let's take the king. Saul and the people spared Agag and the best of the sheep. And the best of the sheep, oxen, fatlings. Ile instruction aliambiwa, yani hata mtoi mwenye anazaliwa jana, take out. This guy is like, no, king, sheep, oxen. Then the word of the Lord came to Samuel saying, I regret, so first of all, chap, I regret making this guy king. He has turned back from following me and has not performed my commands. When Samuel rose early to meet Saul in the morning, he was told Saul came to Carmel. Verse 14, and Samuel said, what then means this bleating? And he anajitetea, nataka kupatiana sacrifice. They have brought them from the Amalekites. Then Samuel said to him, stop. I will tell you what the Lord said to me tonight. When you are small in your own sight, were you not made the head of the tribes of Israel? And the Lord anointed you king, and the Lord sent you on a mission, go and utterly destroy. Why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord, but swooped down upon the plunder and did evil in the Lord's sight? Did evil. That's the description of Saul's act to God. You did evil. As guys think evil is... Okay, nimeachia hapo. Saul said to Samuel, yes, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord. And he's still explaining himself. I mean, but I've obeyed the voice of the Lord and have gone the way which the Lord sent me and have brought Agag king and have utterly destroyed. It's like he's not noticing the statement he's throwing in there. I've thrown, I did what I was asked to do and I've come with the king. It's like, it's as if someone is plugging in statements in his head and he's not present. But the people took from the spoil sheep and oxen, the chief of the things to be utterly destroyed, to sacrifice to the Lord. Note, who took? The people. So he's claiming the guys he went with are the ones who took. Sawa. Samuel said, has the Lord as great a delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. For rebellion is as a sin of witchcraft. And the story goes on. When you get impatient with God, you start, like Titus said, you start seeing things for yourself. A plain old instruction of kill everyone becomes, no, let's spare the king. Tuchukue mbuzi for sacrifice. Yeah, it makes sense. Because in your mind, what he's saying doesn't make sense. His instruction doesn't make sense. His timing doesn't make sense. You begin to take light the instruction of God. I don't know whether you guys are seeing yourself here. And similar to the same story, it is a thing that you are even allowing other people to misdirect you. So Aaron was asked to make an idol by the people. Saul accepted the sheep for offering by the people. By the way, these people who took the sheep, were they there when Saul was being told, I have rejected you? Exodus 32:2. So Aaron replied, very industrious dude, take the gold rings from the ears of your wives, your sons and daughters, and bring them to me. And all the people took the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. And he received the gold at their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made it a molten calf. And they said, these are your gods. O Israel, which brought you up out of the land of Egypt. When you're impatient with God, when you have a stiff-necked heart, you even give credit of God's things to other gods, as it were. Whether it's creating your own idol, whether it's your image of who God looks like or behaves like, you have an assumption of who God is. And you see, for these guys it was obvious. We've built a calf. Idolatry was very visible. For us it is riskier because it is something we can carry in our heads. It is something that we have an image of God, a Santa Claus God, or I will make demands type of God. I will decree and declare how my morning shall be, and that's what God will do. And that becomes the image of the Lord, whom he was asking, you call me Lord, but don't do what I do. We've turned it around. And when Aaron saw the molten calf, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made proclamation and said, tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord. I don't know which Lord he meant here, because it writes capital L. And they rose up early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. Play. The Lord said to Moses, go down, for your people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. Amejitenga. They have turned aside. Eh? Yeah, by the way, he's the one who brought them out.
Yes.
Hmm?
Do you really want me to explain that?
We will get there. Let me get to the issues. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made them a molten calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it and said, these are your gods, O Israel, that brought you up out of the land of Egypt. And the Lord said to Moses, I have seen these people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Stiff-necked people coerce priests to do stuff. So the priest has instructions, motaratara, if I might call it, or whatever it may be. But us guys, if we have each years, we are the ones who make demands. You know, I have heard it said once, maybe not once. There are places where if they decide no more music, no more attendance. If Boni is no longer worship leader, half the congregation disappears. Because there are people who are there not for God. They are there for themselves. It is a thing they have decided. You know the way, in fact, let me put it like this. If you go for a movie and for whatever good or bad reason, there is no sound, see you cause, right? You paid for it. I came to watch a movie. It was not a mime. There is no sound. My money back or sort it out. So now that is what has become of stiff-necked believers. We go to church and I paid for entertainment. I expect performance, right? Stiff-necked people do that. And some priests themselves, and in this regard, therefore, I bundle all of you as priests, they themselves also have itchy ears. Because as a priest, or like Saul, you decide, okay, if these guys want this, I might not look good in their eyes. So let us do what they want. Let us build the band. Let us bring the sheep for sacrifice. Let us make the calf. This stiff-neckedness, this place where you even have, you're disillusioned about who's doing what, who brought you out. You have a lack of understanding of where God acts and where God's man acts, where the credit to the things happening in your life are to the people God uses. the God who says he will share not his glory with men, you are definitely not going to be doing what he asks of you to do. You will be in the opposite direction. Near guarantee. Short version of what you wanted to explain.
Actually, iko huko juu 32, huko chapter, verse 1.
Sema.
They say, make us gods to go before us, as from this Moses, the man who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. So the problem is these guys didn't look at Moses as the messenger. Moses was their God.
Kusha. You've made it even worse for them. So even you guys, are you looking at the
So
Titus as your God?
So with Moses being God, the image of God to them, I'm sorry to use this, but that priest thing, the priests to a congregation in which he has a priest with, can I call it a protective gear, whereby they want to do it so that their congregation cannot turn on them.
Yes.
So the congregation looks at them as a God they can bribe. So it speaks about what we are today.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I want to jump to something else. Self-preservation, as stiff-necked people, is interested in self-preserving. Sijui ni nini, lakini the things God asks you to do require your death. Christ said, if you shall follow me, you shall do what? Take up your cross and follow me daily. Take up your cross every day and follow me. And we all know crosses are not pendants. It's not bling. A cross is for death. Last time we touched on Isaiah 58. But there's a verse over there that is very interesting. Every time I read it, it like startles me back to God's reality. So first of all, I remember someone here got very excited about verse 4. If this is how you fast, do not expect to be heard. But it progresses somewhere, and he says in verse 10, and if you pour out, Isaiah 58:10, and if you pour out that with which you sustain your own life for the hungry and satisfy the need of the afflicted, then shall your light rise in darkness and your obscurity and gloom become like the noonday. That statement suggests you're not just giving out of your excess. It suggests that in you looking out for the justice of others, you put yourself at a point where you must then rely on God. Because he says, you pour out that which you sustain your life with. You know, that statement that's not, I don't hear people talk about this. Because under normal circumstances, if this is my water and I need this water now, this instruction means the guy who needs justice where water is concerned, I don't sustain myself with this, I give it to them. I'm not sure we do that. I know Paul spoke of some church, I don't remember whether it was the Corinthians, who he says they gave and gave beyond their giving, beyond what they had. I think that's the only example I have of this. But the thing that you sustain your life with is the thing you are to pour out. But then the next verse is interesting. And the Lord shall guide you continually and satisfy you in drought and dry places and make strong your bones. For what? Why are we strengthening you? To do. To do. And you shall be like a watered garden, Boni last week, springs, sindio? And like a spring of water, whose water fails not. You give away which sustains you. He will strengthen your bones for you to keep doing what he asked of you. For as long as we are operating in self-preservation, for as long as it has become our goal to keep ourselves, you will not do even the list of the things he's asked you to do. It's not going to happen because, again, the thing he demands of you requires faith, which means it's not the normal thing. Titus has just told us he was asked to cross the road in the rain. Self-preservation says, no, I don't have an umbrella. It is raining. Why would I cross in the rain? Right? Self-preservation will always keep you away from God's path. I want to say it's a guarantee. Lakini it's a guarantee. I mean, it's not the... Listen, if you self-preserve, you will be able to say, I got myself here. Right? So, glory ni anani? Liability apportionment. You know, I mean, insurance kiasi. So, we have glory apportionment. God 90%, 10 was me. You know, it's not going to happen. So, if you self-preserve, you can't do the thing God is asking of you. Compassion. If you read all over the life of Jesus, there was a lot of moved with compassion statements. I picked a few. I don't know whether it's all of them. Matthew 14:14. When he went ashore and saw a great throng of people, he had compassion, pity, and deep sympathy for them, and cured their sick. So, number one, moved with compassion equals good deeds. Cured their sick. When evening came, the disciples came to him and said, this is a remote and barren place, and the day is now over. Send the throngs away into the villages to buy food for themselves. Jesus said, they do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. Again, compassion. He's being driven by something the disciples lack at this point. Right? For him, the need of the people is his primary driver. Isaiah 58, justice for the oppressed. They are hungry. They are in need of healing. That's the thing that's driving him. So then like, biashara imeisha, like he said, gathering crowds, it's time for people to leave, get the people. He's like, no, feed them. Right? Matthew 18:25, and because he could not pay, this is not talking about Jesus, by the way, and because he could not pay, his master ordered him to be sold. This is the guy who had a debt and he was unable to pay, so akaenda kujitetea. His master ordered him to be sold with his wife and his children and everything that he possessed, and payment to be made. So the attendant fell on his knees, begging him, have patience with me and I will pay you everything. And his master's heart was moved with compassion, and he released him and forgave him. Compassion, good deeds, forgiveness. This is not Christ. This is a dude. Of course, it's a story. I mean, it's a parable, but this is a dude, right? Luke 7:11. Soon afterward, Jesus went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a great throng accompanied him. Just as he drew near the gate of the town, behold, a man who had died was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and a large gathering from the town was accompanying her. And when the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her and said to her, do not weep. And he went forward and touched the funeral bier, and the pallbearer stood still, and he said, young man, I say to you, arise from death. And the man who was dead sat up and began to speak, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. Again, moved by compassion. Kwanza, now this one explains a little bit more. He just didn't see a dead guy. He saw a woman who's lost family, the only family she has, sorry. And that is the compassion trigger for him in this case. And he's like, I can't let this go. Let's sort this deal. We need to develop compassion to be able to act like God does. There's a verse I read and I didn't write it down that talks about things God did as a result of his compassionate heart or compassionate nature. When it says God is love, you know, God doesn't have love. He doesn't possess love. He is love. It's his nature. It's the way he is light in unapproachable light. He is love as well. If you are going to get close to what God is, compassion and love, or same difference, I don't know. Compassion, love is one way that you're getting closer to him, because that is, I used to say, I know I am loving because I die. Then I read 1 Corinthians 13, and Paul says, even if you get burnt at the stake and you lack love, you have done it for nothing. Love, compassion, is the thing that puts you, your heart and God's heart as close as possible, because that's who he is. What happens when we lack compassion? But it displeased Jonah exceedingly, and he was very angry. And this is Jonah 4. And he prayed to the Lord and said, I pray you, O Lord, is not this just what I said when I was still in my country? That is why I fled for I knew to Tarshish, for I knew that you are a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger and of great kindness. And when sinners turn to you and meet your conditions, you revoke the sentence of evil. Yani, uga amefika mahali, he's reciting God back to God. I know you guys, you're full of love. Me, this mission of yours, I'm not doing. How many times does God tell you to do a thing and your state of compassion for the business you have to attend to is amiss? You're like, me, ati, uga alifanya nini? This neighbor who hurt me where? This boss of mine who does what? Where you see things from the flesh and your compassion is off, switched off, as it were. You start actually telling God, I know you're good. Me, Staki story. Right? Therefore now, verse 3, O Lord, I beseech you, take my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live. Definitely you would rather die than do God's work. Then said the Lord, do you do well to be angry? Maswaliza Titus. So Jonah went out to the city and sat to the east of the city, and he made a booth there for himself. He sat there under it in the shade till he might see what would become of the city. Sasa unangoja. You've lacked compassion, now you're waiting for God to act in your favor. Ni maombi ngapi tumefanya za ngoja uone? Ngoja uone God akikam. Compassionate, we are compassionate people. And the Lord God prepared, while this guy is waiting to see this, God is like, let me show you. And the Lord God prepared a gourd and made it to come up over Jonah, that it might be a shade over his head to deliver him from his evil situation. So Jonah was exceedingly glad to have protection of the gourd. And when the sun arose, God prepared a no, I've jumped. Yes, but verse 7, but God prepared a cutworm when the morning dawned the next day, and it smote the gourd so that it withered. And when the sun arose, God prepared a sultry east wind, and the sun beat upon the head of Jonah, so that he fainted and wished in himself to die, and said, it is better for me to die. And God said to Jonah, do you do well to be angry for the loss of the gourd? And he said, I do well to be angry enough to die. Then said the Lord, you have had pity on the gourd. When you lack compassion, even your focus is on irrelevant things. You would rather someone dies. You would rather God's people are killed, but you're pissed about your comforts. Self-preservation. Then the Lord said, you have had pity on the gourd for which you've not labored, nor made it grow. Ata si kazi yako. Which came up in a night and perished in a night. And should I not spare Nineveh, the great city, in which there are more than 120,000 people, not yet old enough to know their right hand from their left, and also many cattle, not accountable for sin. When you lack compassion, self-preservation becomes the next thing. You can never commit to doing what God asks of you. Your comforts, of course, become priority. You will actually ask God to take people out. Bonnie?
This guy, it's 4 chapters, him justifying sin.
Uh-huh.
Like,
him,
he's so stiff-necked to a point where God anamwambia, by the way, ulinimess. And then he is like, nilikumess, kwa sababu wewe umejai.
exactly.
Like, it's
Back to the other description of evil people.
his bad.
He is defending his evil state, as it were.
Yes.
Right?
Ndio alisema ndio maana nilienda huku.
Yes. Another group of people who lack compassion. Luke 9. Luke 9:51. Now when the time was almost come for Jesus to be received up to heaven, he steadfastly and determinedly set his face to go to Jerusalem. By the way, someone needs to tell me this story, but anyway. And he sent messengers before him, and they reached and entered a Samaritan village to make things ready for him. So we already know Jews and Samaritans had beef. Sindio? But the people would not welcome or receive or accept him because his face was set as if he was going to Jerusalem. So I found that statement very interesting. We will dig deeper. But I continue. And when his disciples, James and John, observed this, they said, Lord, do you wish us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, even as Elijah did? You know, I had someone say, we've been nasty condemning Muslims about religious terrorism. This right here is religious terrorism. My guy has come to your city. You've rejected him. My solution, you'll die. Is there another word other than terrorist? Huh? Luke 9 from 51 to 56. But Jesus turned and rebuked and severely censured them. He said, you do not know of what sort of spirit you are. Maybe you're telling them you're a terrorist spirit. Anyway. For the Son of Man did not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them from the penalty of eternal death. There's something I took interesting note of. When James and John spoke, they said this, do you wish us to command fire to come down? They did not say command fire. You know, that tells me these are people who already have an understanding of their authority with Jesus. If they were still children, you know, lower in maturity, as it were, I'm not saying they're fully mature, but if they were lower in maturity, they'd have been like, these guys rejected you, call fire, take them out. They said, should we? Can God trust you with the authority He's given you? Can God trust you with the power He's given you? Are you compassionate enough to act in line with the mission of God, not the thing you see, that vision he was talking about earlier? The vision of yourself that the vision you've decided is the one. They've rejected you, they must die. Another issue, and I think I am about to close, but anyway, self-image. In the middle of the night, I remembered a random song, which I don't know that I'll remember now. I forget. I remembered a random old church song, which reminded me of all the songs we sing about God's power, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. It follows. If you read Psalms, a majority of it is the hand of God, the things God has done. But in the midst of that song, in my trying to get back to sleep, I'm like, it's still early. I thought, just chewing. At what point do we accept the responsibility God has put on us for the job He's asked of us? Yes, God is powerful. He gives us power. He's all powerful. He does all the things He does. The myriads of songs are many. But do we know who we are in Him, that we are able to do what He's asked us to do? I was thinking about the prodigal brother. not the son, the brother. And I was wondering, is there a class we go for to be taught to be our father's sons? Did any of you do that? So I wondered, and I'm still wondering, is the responsibility for your maturity as a son yours or your father's? Is the responsibility for your maturity in sonship yours or your father's? Do you remember a time when your father came and said, son, Boni, maturity 101? I don't know what that would look like, but does anyone go through that? But I'm not saying there is no role for the father, but I'm saying there's a role for you as well, right? Dare I use the things that we have said? You can take a donkey or an ass or a cow to the river, but
It won't force it to drink.
yes, it decides to drink for itself. See, the prodigal brother, and I didn't write where this one is. Someone check. I don't know if it's Luke 5 or no, that can't be it. I didn't write the book, but it's from some verse 25. But his older son was in the field. This is now the prodigal brother. This guy has gone, chomered everything, comes back. His father is uku excited, dresses him, gives him a ring. First of all, I thought of the imagery that is being discussed here. He says he gives him a robe, gives him a ring, and shoes, right? Sandals, eh? So, robe, jeez. The robe, we are discussing a mindset, I think. Royalty, yes, and a mindset. Because your garments are about, there's a time we discussed this, and I do not know again whether it covers every time, but there's a time we're discussing that your garments are about the mindset you carry. We were discussing the mindset that the Kina Shadrach had to be burnt off when they were thrown into the fire. There's a mindset that this guy gets enveloped in when he's restored. Then he's given authority, he's given a ring. Back in the days when I hand over my business to my son Sichei, I gave him a ring. The ring has my signet. So if he goes and closes a deal, and they put a wax thing and he puts the ring on it, when people see it, they're not saying Sichei closed the deal. It's I who closed the deal. He was given authority. Haya, sandals, tunaongea nini? What are the sandals about? Peace. Boni ametupeleka the gospel of peace. The jury is out. So after all this has happened, the guy has come back. The brother was where? He was working.
Yeah, it's peace, sorry.
It's peace.
Because in a city where they don't allow you, like, we need brush off your, so that
Yes.
you live in peace.
Uh-huh.
So, sandals is peace, yes.
So the older son was in the field, and as he returned and came near the house, he heard the bash going down. And having called one of the servant boys to him, he began to ask what this meant. And the servant said, your brother has come, and your father has killed that wheat-fattened calf, because he has received him back safe and well. But the elder brother was angry. So first of all, there's a lack of compassion here, kiasi. He was angry with deep-seated wrath and resolved not to go in. Then his father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, look, these many years I've served you, and I've never disobeyed your command. Hatutaongea maneno ya mafarisi hapa, but yet you never gave me so much as a little kid that I might revel, and feast and be happy and make merry with my friends. But when this son of yours, sasa first of all, let us see my brother, this son of yours, when this son of yours arrived, who has devoured your estate with immoral women, how did he know? You have killed for him that wheat-fattened calf. Ugea kujiuliza hii wheat-fattened calf ilikuwa Fataniwa for what? Anyway. And the father said to him, Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But it was fitting to make merry, to revel and feast and rejoice, for this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. This statement, the father tells him, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours, is what I'm interested in. It tells me of someone who has not known who he is. It speaks of a son who is lost in servanthood. Right? He, in fact, when you think about it, everything the prodigal guy who went and came back was given, he had access to. He had access to the ring, he had access to the mindset of royalty, he had access to peace. But for him, because he's not seen himself as he ought to, all he wants is a calf to party. Right? He's not even interested in the things that the father is concerned about, which is why I think the fattened calf was being fattened. There is a father who has hope of a son returning. But there is a son, a brother, who is oblivious. He thinks that, I don't even know, we are fattening a calf for, maybe it was a tradition, I will check. Maybe there's a tradition of fattening the calf, just in case, I don't know. But in his mind, are you seeing the things he's pointing at? This guy has devoured your wealth with immoral women. I do not know how he found that out. Maybe he went to check on him. I don't know. But when he comes back, the thing you've set aside for a big thing, you've killed for him. He's not, this statement, your brother was dead and is now alive, seems to elude his mind. Right? Yeah. All this driven from a lack of understanding of who he is in this house. Mimi ni mfuasi wako, nimefanya hii kazi yote, hata kondoo. Another aspect of our self-image we lack is in 1 Corinthians 3. However, brethren, I could not talk to you as to spiritual men, but as to non-spiritual men of the flesh, in whom the carnal nature predominates, as to mere infants in the new life in Christ, unable to talk yet. I was reading something random the other day about the way the use of the flesh in the scripture has been used to signify a constant war between the flesh and the spirit. You know, every time the flesh is used, people think sexual desire and all those kind of things, yet we are probably meant to be going towards integration of ourselves into a higher being, but that's a random conversation. I fed you with milk, this is Paul talking, not solid food, for you are not yet strong enough to be ready for it. But even yet, you are not strong enough to be ready for it. For you are still unspiritual, having the nature of the flesh, under the control of ordinary impulses. I like that it explains this. Under the control of ordinary impulses, like we discussed last time. Your own self-preservation issues. I gotta eat. I gotta sleep. I need to be seen to dress well, Ordinary impulses. For as long as there are envying and jealousy and wrangling and factions among you, you are not unspiritual and of the flesh, behaving yourselves after a human standard and like mere. Are you not unspiritual and of the flesh, behaving yourselves after a human standard and like mere unchanged men? Excuse me. For when one says, I belong to Paul, and another, I belong to Apollos, are you not proving yourselves ordinary and unchanged? Hii ni maneno ya like what Bonnie said earlier. They saw Moses as their God. What then is Apollos? What is Paul? Ministering servants, not heads of parties, through whom you believed, even as the Lord appointed to each his task. So these are guys who have work. Them, they are working. You huku deciding, this is my party. Shauri yako. I planted, Apollos watered, but God all the while was making it grow, and he gave the increase. So neither he who plants is anything, nor he who waters, but only God who makes it grow and become greater. He who plants and he who waters are equal, one in aim of the same importance and esteem, yet each shall receive his own reward, wages according to his labor. Yani according to his works. Yani according to his deeds. For we are fellow workmen, joint promoters, laborers together with and for God. Number 2, do we see ourselves as joint workmen with God? Or are we receivers? Santa Claus. You are God's... Okay, let me start again. Verse 9. For we are fellow workmen, joint promoters, laborers together with and for God. So we are working for him. That one is kind of rather obvious. Very many people go there quickly. But we are working with him. Which means, like Titus said earlier as well, when you are lacking in your capacity to see, you hamper the progress he's planning. Sindio? In like manner, if you do not work with him, you are slowing down Project X, whatever he's working towards. But the next part of this I find even more interesting. You are God's garden and vineyard and field under cultivation. So while you are working with and for God, part of that work is you. So you are unable to do what God is saying. In your inability to do what God is saying, because of all these things we are listing, among many others, one of the things that's being hampered is you. Because you are a garden that God is working on as well. And you are one of the resources required in building that garden, in planting that garden. You are God's building. It finishes there. It's a very interesting interconnectedness that you're... What? So you need to work with God, and while you're doing that, part of the work you're doing is building you, while you're building whoever else you're building, which is a very thing. It's an interesting conundrum. Every time I think about it, it jazzes me and scares me, because sometimes we get lost in feed the hungry or preach or start the business, and forget that in these things that you're being asked to do, which you ought to do and you ought to do in compassion, that part of the process is you being worked on. That while God is doing the thing, he is doing the thing. Fanya ile kitu. Right? Yet, for as long as we are not involved in the process of what he's doing, if we allow all these things we are enumerating, self-preservation and itchy ears and all this stuff, we are also hampering our own maturity. If we lack compassion and we would rather the next guy dies, you're effectively checking your own tick box for kill me as well. Right? What do we do to start eroding these challenges? What do we do to start turning the curve? We need to trust God. We need to abandon ourselves to his hands. When you have impatience and self-preservation is your thing, you can't trust. Siko baya. There's a thing someone likes saying, Mark likes saying. There are people, if you ask them, I'm in need of help, I need you now, and they say, I'm coming, you calm down. They have not come. They have not arrived. You calm down. They're like, Chelsea anakam. Amesema anakam? I'm sorted. When God tells you, I got this, do you have that calm? You're like, but wait, you went up the mountain 40 days ago, right? For as long as we are not in that space of being able to abandon ourselves to God, we can't take the step of go do the thing, because it requires faith, right? It requires giving away the thing that sustains your life. The few times I have done that, and someone happens to be present and they ask why I've done it, and I explain, they're like, are you crazy? It's weird, it sounds weird, because it does not make sense. What I give you an example. The other day I told someone that there's someone, I have a trader on the street whom we've become friends, whom I buy stuff from. That price, siko baya, I know it's ridiculous. From the day I started buying, I knew it was ridiculous, because I had options. I went and bought, when he didn't have, I went and bought elsewhere. I knew it was ridiculous. But I have kept buying, not because I must have the thing, but because I've realized there's a need. And I'm building a friendship with this guy. And someone asked me, why would you do that? Even I asked myself, what am I doing? It sounds weird. It does not make sense. And that's the reason why the word abandon is appropriate. We use abandon when we dump things. Sindio? Abandoned, unakumbuka huko kwenyu mtaani, ile Volkswagen iliachwa hapo kando, ile mnachezanga nayo hide and seek. Kwenyu ni bima. That's wrong estate, sorry. The thing has been abandoned. Rust, rangi, imeisha, no wheels, it's on the floor. That's abandonment. But abandoning yourself already sounds wrong. But abandoning yourselves to God's hands is the thing we need to do. Because for as long as we cannot do that, the weird things of Ezekiel being told to lie down, and even these days we don't do such weird things. Lie down on one side, sijui 39 days, and then I don't know, flip on the other side. Tutatoboa kweli? Walk with God. And this one, I'm not going to leave it as simply walk with God. Walk with God and destroy temples. I don't know why this story keeps coming up the last several times. If God brought us here, and this is how he brought us, and then he leaves, effectively it's as if once he's left, this becomes your next potential idol. Right? So, there's a time we were discussing about the way. First of all, Jesus is the way. Sindio? Then I think it was Abraham. God said of Abraham, he is my friend. I know he will teach his children of what? The way. Sindio? Ways are not static. Ways are discussing destinations. Right? Walking with God means there is not staticness. Is there a word like that? There isn't settling. Nimetengeneza jina. There isn't any settling. But it is easy to create Bethels because God did a thing. We have seen Elijah and Moses. Let's make a tent. Like there's someone who said that's what tradition is. We add trade to it. It becomes a tradition. It becomes a place that you decide the value of, probably gain value from. So the thing that was happening, kazi yake iliisha. Jesus has been strengthened, it's a wrap. But you're like, no, what do you mean it's a wrap? Hapa ndio mambo yote iko. We need to move when God moves. We need to be in tune with God. When he moves, you move. Just like? We need to seek God and avoid itchy ears. So this is simply the issue of deciding what you want to hear. Itchy ears, the mention of itchy ears, I think it was something Paul said, right? They gather for themselves people, teachers, who say the things that excite their itchy ears. That's my paraphrase. you realize seeking means something's missing, right? Nikikwambia tafuteni that gold bar that is in this room, it means you do not know where it is. It means you have to go beyond what you're used to. If there's if I tell you there's a gold bar in this room, you look around first at the norm. There's no gold bar. Then you must now do the next thing. Either you start breaking walls, you know, you have to go beyond where you're at. And I was, again, that article, that random thing I stumbled on the other day, I read something which I found very interesting. I'm yet to dig deeper into it, but I think I should. Oh, goodness. So some guy, I don't know who he is, in his major work, he speaks of two facets of the mind. The one constantly urges us into new frontiers and towards further growth. The other seeks the comfort and security of a stable status quo. This guy calls the first one, the one that pushes you towards new frontiers, consciousness or the human spirit, and the other one, psyche. I thought that explains this need for God to be sought. It's as if he built in us a thing that knows this cannot be it. There is something in each and every one of us that is always pursuing the next thing. It's pursuing new frontiers. And in his wisdom, he then says, seek me with all your heart. And if you seek me, you will find me. And when you find him, what happens? He requires you to seek some more. I find that very interesting that, and I don't know whether this guy is a religious person, but that explanation for me explains the hiddenness of God. You know, these people who are like, if God is God, why doesn't he show up? He requires seekers. But yes, in seeking him, it means your capacity for avoiding itchy talk is heightened, because you are then in a constant increase of relationship and understanding what God is doing and saying. Not to mention, when he says, it requires you to do, right? Which cycles back to the guarding of our heart. And then we need to cultivate compassion. We just need to simply do things that are compassionate and bleed for people. I don't mean cut yourself, but we need to get to the point where where the state of people's lack of justice causes you pain, causes you to ask God, now what? What do I do? Right? We need to cultivate compassion. And it's a thing for growing. It's not a switch. Again, you know, we have this illusion sometimes that now I am a loving person. And it's like I wore this jacket. This jacket is compassion. I got compassion. I got this. No. You do it once, you trip the next time. It's something we build over time. We have to cultivate it. And weird that I use the word cultivate. Cultivate equals what? Water. Lima. By the time you are seeing the results of that thing, it's a while, right? So basically work at building compassion. And then, finally, see yourselves right. Your identity as sons is key. And again, I wrote the scriptures and I didn't write where they came from. Your identity as sons is important. This is where we're discussing the prodigal brother. Because for as long as you are not in tune with whom you are in God, even the things you do, you're doing them as a servant. There is a there's a scripture, I think Jesus was talking and saying, I don't call you servants anymore, I call you friends. Because servants don't know what the master is doing. Them, their work is, wait, Lima, Jenga, what are we building? They have got no idea. They have got no idea that we are building this building so that we sell it and make money. Or we are building this building so that we feed the hungry. They don't know. A servant just picks a rock, cement, we're good to go. He calls us friends, co-workers. But for you to be in that space, which goes back to the earlier conversation, there is some work on your part. The maturity is, God is working in you, but you are working as well. Today this answered a question I've had for a long time. Is it God working in me to become, or is it me working in me to become? It is both. When God says, you do. When you do, it allows him to do a thing. So if one is lacking, and God is not the one lacking, equals stunted growth, right? Our identity as sons, therefore, is key. If you have got no capacity to approach the throne of your father, and I know I've mixed things there, things become messy. Because when your father walked in, and now I'm coming back to earth, when your father walked in and you knew you had kosead, you know, there's a time my younger brother was playing in the compound, alafu akanirushia mawe, he was trying to hit me, but he can't throw fast enough, so I ducked. But what was behind me? No, the car. Ikachapa windscreen hapa hivi, hapa kwa kona. And it did that thing for, unajua kama mahindi. It just, it did fall. Yani, have you ever wanted someone to be beaten, but you're like, by the way, he's going to be beaten so bad, you stop wanting for that to happen? I was actually worried. Now, because he, like many of us, are now not expecting your father. You are expecting the judge. How do you approach that guy when he walks in that day? The typical daddy, gone. No? Sindio? He doesn't know what has happened yet. But you've already changed. You will no longer welcome your father because you are expecting a judge. Yet, he is desirous of us to reach sonship heights so that we become like Abraham. I cannot do a thing until I tell my boy. Right? As guys are who still running, so what are you doing? We are chasing after the fact, whereas we are the ones who are supposed to be telling people, whatever is coming, be prepared, or this is what God is doing, or this is where we are going. It's not going to happen for as long as even we do not see ourselves as that son. It's not going to happen. We need to nurture, we need to do the things required to mature in Christ. In it is the doing of what we have learned. For as long as we are working, he is working because we are co-workers. That joke. Why does a flamingo stand on one leg? Because if it lifts the other one, it will fall. If you work, if God is working and you're not, progress, zero. Sindio? And in this case, progress is you as well. Right? You are part of what God is working on. Find this, I don't know how to find it. So it's a verse 21. So get rid of all uncleanness and the rampant outgrowth and wickedness, and in a humble, gentle, modest spirit receive and welcome the word. James 1. James 1:21. So get rid of all uncleanness and the rampant outgrowth of wickedness, and in a humble, gentle, modest spirit receive and welcome the word which implanted and rooted in your hearts contains the power to save your souls. But be doers of the word. We've gone round robin. Obey the message and not merely listeners to it, betraying yourselves into deception by reasoning contrary to the truth. So first of all, tulianzia last week about trying to deal with deception. Sindio? Tunamalizia na, if you are a hearer only, you're betraying yourself into deception. If you are a hearer of the truth only, you are betraying yourself into deception. Which means, for as long as we are not doing the things that we must do, deception knocketh. Sindio? Si mimi nasema, sindio? For if anyone only listens to the word without obeying it and being a doer of it, he is like a man who looks carefully at his own natural face in a mirror, for he thoughtfully observes himself and then goes off and promptly forgets what he was like. But he who looks carefully into the faultless law of liberty and is faithful to it and perseveres in looking into it. Why are we persevering? No, persevering to look is not reading. Why do you need perseverance for reading? Perseverance for looking into it means there's a thing that you're required to do, and it is making a demand, right? And perseveres in looking into it, being not a heedless listener who forgets but an active doer, he shall be blessed in his doing his life of obedience. If anyone thinks himself to be religious, piously observant of the external duties of his faith, and does not bridle his tongue, but deludes his own heart, this person's religious service is worthless, futile, and barren. Barren equals fruitless. See? External religious worship, as is expressed in outward acts, that is pure and unblemished in the sight of God the Father, is this. Isaiah 58. To visit and help and care for the orphans and widows in their affliction and need, and to keep oneself unspotted and uncontaminated from the world. Basically, if we are not shifting into doing, whether it's for lack of compassion, self-preservation, impatience with God, whatever we've discussed today, whatever we will discover tomorrow, if all these things stop us from doing what we've been asked to do, deception is right next to you. And the worst statement for today, I guess, is that even if you are a reader of the truth, but do not do it, wewe na deception, same what's up. So, we guard ourselves from being stiff-necked. And we guard ourselves by obedience. Like a friend of mine here said, enjoy obedience. I'll see you. I'm done.